the promise that time couldn't break. 10 years. A decade of loneliness, longing, and waiting. For Elena, it felt like a lifetime. She could still remember the day they took him away, the moment when everything she had known and loved was torn from her grasp. Elena had met Alex when they were just teenagers. He was the kind of boy who made the world feel bigger, brighter. With him, she felt invincible, like no challenge was too great as long as they faced it together. They fell deeply in love, spending every moment they could wrapped up in each other's dreams, believing nothing could ever tear them apart. But life had a cruel way of testing love's strength. Alex, always fiercely protective, got into a terrible situation. One fateful night, trying to defend his younger brother from a dangerous group, things spiraled out of control. A fight broke out, and before anyone could stop it, someone was seriously hurt. Though it wasn't Alex's fault, he was caught in the crossfire of justice. Charged with aggravated assault, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Elena's world shattered that day. She remembered the courtroom, how Alex had tried to stay strong, his eyes never leaving hers, as if willing her to understand. And she did. She knew that he had only done what he thought was right. But the system didn't care. They took him away, and just like that, their future crumbled into dust. Everyone told her to move on. He's gone for a long time, Elena. You're young. You need to live your life. Her friends, her family, they all tried to gently push her to forget Alex and find someone new. But how could she? Her heart belonged to him. It always had, and it always would. She promised herself that day in the courtroom that she would wait, no matter how long it took, no matter how hard it would be. Elena wasn't naive. She knew the road ahead would be filled with loneliness, doubt, and the kind of pain that only love could bring. But she also knew she couldn't let him go. For the first few months, Elena visited Alex every week. She'd sit across from him in the cold, sterile visiting room, their fingers only inches apart but separated by thick glass. The moments they shared were brief, but they kept her going. They'd talk about everything, about the world outside, about her work, about how they'd start over once he was free. They'd laugh, sometimes even forget for a few minutes that they were in a prison. And for those moments, it felt like nothing had changed. But as time went on, the visits became harder. The distance, both physical and emotional, started to weigh on them. Alex, always so strong, began to retreat into himself. He told her it wasn't fair for her to keep waiting. "You deserve more, Elena. You deserve someone who can give you a life. I'm not that person anymore." But she never wavered. "I promised you, Alex. I'm not going anywhere." As the years passed, Elena's world outside the prison walls moved forward. Her friends got married, started families, and built lives. Sometimes she'd look at them and feel a pang of longing. She wanted that too, a home, children, a life with the man she loved. But those dreams were on hold, locked away just like Alex. She filled her days with work, with hobbies, with anything to keep her mind busy. But at night, when the world was quiet, the loneliness would creep in. She'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if Alex was thinking of her too. She'd trace the letters he sent her with her fingers, reading them over and over again until she had memorized every word. The world outside the prison changed, but her love for Alex never did. Then, in the 9th year of his sentence, everything changed. Elena had gone to visit Alex as usual, but this time there was something different in his eyes. A flicker of hope, of something she hadn't seen in a long time. He told her that his case was being reviewed. New evidence had come to light, and there was a chance, just a chance, that he could be released early. For the next few months, Elena barely allowed herself to hope. She had learned over the years not to get too attached to the idea of freedom. It was too painful when it didn't happen. But then, one bright spring day, she got the call she had been dreaming of for a decade. Alex was coming home. She rushed to the prison gates the day he was released, her heart pounding in her chest. She hadn't seen him in person, without glass between them, in so long. When he stepped out, his face was different, more lined, more weary, but his eyes were the same deep brown that had stolen her heart all those years ago. They stood there for a moment, staring at each other, as if the world had stopped. Then, without a word, Elena ran to him, wrapping her arms around him as tightly as she could. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "You're home. You're finally home." For a long time, they just held each other, neither of them speaking. There were no words that could capture the magnitude of the moment. The months that followed were filled with both joy and pain. Alex had to adjust to a world that had moved on without him. He struggled with feelings of guilt, of anger, of everything he had lost. But through it all, Elena was there, just as she had promised. There were nights when Alex would wake up from nightmares, his body drenched in sweat, haunted by the years behind bars. Elena would hold him, whispering that it was over, that he was safe, that they were together now. It wasn't easy. 10 years had taken their toll. But slowly they began to rebuild. Their love, though battered and bruised, had survived the storm. On the anniversary of Alex's release, they stood together at the small house they had finally bought, something they had dreamed of for so long. Alex took Elena's hand, pulling her close as they watched the sunset. "I don't know how I got so lucky," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't deserve you, Elena." She smiled, resting her head on his chest. "You fought for us, Alex. We both did. And now, we have forever." And for the first time in a decade, they truly believed it. As they stood together, the warmth of the setting sun on their skin, Alex and Elena felt as if they had finally won the battle life had waged against them. Their love had survived the darkest of times, and now they were free to start anew. But life, as always, had more in store for them than either could anticipate. A few months after settling into their new life, something changed. Alex had been growing distant. The trauma of his time in prison still lingered, haunting him in ways Elena couldn't fully understand. He would often stare out the window for hours, lost in thought, his expression unreadable. Elena, who had been his rock, began to feel cracks forming in their relationship. She could sense that Alex was keeping something from her, something that troubled him deeply. One evening, as they sat together at dinner, the tension between them became unbearable. Elena had always been patient, but this time she couldn't hold back. "Alex, what's going on? You've been different lately. Please talk to me." Alex's eyes flicked up to meet hers, filled with a storm of emotion. For a moment, he seemed to be on the verge of speaking, but then he hesitated, swallowing the words he was about to say. "It's nothing, Elena. I'm just adjusting. I'll be fine." But Elena wasn't convinced. She knew Alex too well. Something was wrong, and he wasn't telling her. Weeks went by, and the distance between them only grew. Then one day, she found a letter hidden in Alex's desk drawer. It was addressed to him from an unknown sender, someone she didn't recognize. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. The words inside made her blood run cold. "We know what you did. You owe us. If you don't deliver, there will be consequences." Elena's heart raced as she read the letter over and over again. Who were these people? What did they want from Alex? And what could he have possibly done to owe anyone anything after all these years? Her mind flashed back to the years he had spent in prison. Had something happened during his time there that she didn't know about? Was Alex involved in something dangerous? That night, Elena confronted Alex with the letter. His face turned pale as soon as he saw it in her hand. "Elena, I can explain." But the explanation that followed only deepened the chasm between them. Alex revealed that while he was in prison, he had fallen into debt with a powerful group, dangerous men who controlled the black market inside and outside the prison walls. To protect his younger brother, who was still mixed up with the wrong crowd, Alex had made a deal with these men. They had promised to help his brother in exchange for a favor, and now that Alex was out, they were calling in that favor. "I thought I could handle it on my own," Alex said, his voice thick with regret. "I didn't want to drag you into this. I never wanted you to know." Elena was devastated. The man she had waited for, the love of her life, was now entangled in something far darker than she could have imagined. And yet, despite the betrayal she felt for being kept in the dark, her heart still ached for him. She knew he had done it out of love for his brother, but the consequences of his actions were now threatening to destroy everything they had fought so hard to rebuild. "I can't believe you didn't tell me," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We're supposed to face things together, Alex. How could you keep this from me?" "I was trying to protect you," Alex said, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away. "I was trying to protect us." But Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the Alex she had known was slipping further and further away. She wasn't sure if their love could survive this new storm. In the following days, Alex became consumed by the debt he owed and the threat looming over them. He spent his nights away from home, meeting with the dangerous men who demanded more and more from him. Elena felt like she was losing him all over again, this time not to prison, but to a world of secrets and lies. One night, after Alex had left the house for yet another secret meeting, Elena received an unexpected visitor. It was a man she had never seen before, tall and imposing, with a cold, calculating gaze. He introduced himself as a representative of the very men who now controlled Alex's life. "I'm here to offer you a deal," he said, his voice smooth but menacing. "If you want to save your husband, you'll have to help us. You see, Alex isn't as innocent as you think. He's been playing both sides for years. But if you do exactly what we say, we can make sure you two walk away from this clean." Elena's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was Alex really involved in something so sinister? Or was this man lying to manipulate her? The choices before her were agonizing. She could go along with the man's plan and risk becoming part of the darkness that had consumed Alex's life, or she could try to confront Alex herself and force him to break free from these dangerous ties. But before Elena could make a decision, events spiraled out of control. The men who had threatened Alex decided they were tired of waiting. One night, while Alex was out, their house was broken into. Elena was left shaken, realizing just how deep they were in danger. In the end, it wasn't Alex's strength or Elena's love that saved them. It was a desperate act of betrayal. Elena, fearing for her life and their future, agreed to the stranger's terms. But she had a plan of her own, a way to bring Alex back from the brink, even if it meant deceiving him in the process. With each move, the stakes grew higher, and Elena found herself drawn deeper into the web of lies that had ensnared Alex. As she navigated the dangerous game she was forced to play, one question haunted her every step. Could their love survive this final test, or would the secrets between them finally tear them apart for good?